Welcome to Politically Unstable with Charles Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor. I'm your host, Andy Parks, and I'd like to remind you that you qualify for a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times, and all you have to do is go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. And now here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Don't call me Charles, call me Charlie Hurt. Hello, Charlie.
Yeah, actually, could you call me Prince Charles? That's what I would prefer. Prince Charles.
King Charles.
King Charles, yes, King Charles. Just don't behead me.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Joe Biden dies slow death by media. Chuck Todd even jumped on the bandwagon. That's amazing.
Yeah, you know it's got to be bad if goofball Chuck Todd, something like even Chuck Todd grasps something, you know that it's got to be super obvious. Like everybody has already noticed it if Chuck Todd is going to finally wake up and realize that, oh yeah, Joe Biden has a credibility problem. But the other funny thing about that is, yeah, speaking of credibility problems, at least you could say this, Chuck Todd is an expert on credibility problems.
Yeah, he is. You know, forgive me, but he's the guy that you wanted to hit in school growing up, you know?
So, and it's really funny, right? But isn't that what kind of all of Washington is? Washington is where all the nerds and the losers, the people that could not accomplish anything in like, especially in politics, because these are also the people that love politics the most, but they could never get elected dog catcher or anything else. So then they become political experts. It's like the professors who can't like make money go become business school teachers, right? Isn't that what you do? If you can't actually do something, then you become an expert at it and lecture the rest of us about it.
All right, and now let's get to the guy in the White House, because it's pretty bad when the left is beating up on you. He really is struggling right now.
It's grim, and and it's easy to, the tendency for us is to. And I mean, I laugh about it all the time because he's so ridiculous. Joe Biden has become, it's getting very serious now. And he has no idea, I don't think, what he's doing. We have no idea who is in control at this point, and which is not exactly the way of like a free democratic republic is supposed to operate. We're supposed to sort of know who is in charge and have some say in how things are going. It's pretty terrifying. And, it's funny. Joe Biden has no constituency whatsoever in America, zero constituency. He won because the media propped him up, refused to ask him hard questions, and made up stories about Donald Trump for 5 years. And that's a real problem if your only constituency is the press. And then even the press gets to the point where they're like, oh, crap, we can't stick up for this anymore. We can't cover for this guy anymore. He's become so unhinged. Even Chuck Todd is like, yeah, this guy has a credibility problem. He has no idea what he's doing. If you live by the press, if that's your only constituency, and then even they have to abandon you, then you have a real problem on your hands. And Joe Biden has a real massive problem on his hands.
Yeah. But they're still trying to help him a little bit by failing to mention certain things. I mean, COVID was to have been all but gone by now. The southern border's an absolute mess. Crackhead Hunter has been hidden from the public view. All the things they've tried to pin on Trump over the years magically attach themselves to Biden, and it's fun watching them scatter.
Yeah. Crackhead Hunter, who's also a deadbeat dad, making his father a deadbeat granddad. It's also important to remember that, because I can't think of anything more despicable than being a deadbeat dad, but that's what Hunter is, but yet we're going to cover for him. Yeah, it is amazing. Even as they start to realize that there are some real problems with Joe Biden, they refuse to acknowledge certain things because there's certain sort of orthodoxies that have come in that they'll never come off of, such as Joe Biden ran on a campaign saying, oh no, COVID is completely the responsibility of Donald Trump, of the president of the United States, and I've got a plan. Well, not only does it turn out, not only do things get worse under Joe Biden because he doesn't have a plan, but he's not even being held to any account on it. Look at the crises that Joe Biden has created entirely of his own making. The human catastrophe at the border, and then the catastrophe in Afghanistan are 100% entirely of Joe Biden's making. And even in those cases, the press is not really holding him accountable. Can you imagine if if the Trump administration had droned a supposed terrorist in Afghanistan and killed an aid worker and his entire family, including 7 children? Can you imagine if Donald Trump had done something like that? And then come out and boasted about it. After Joe Biden killed that aid worker and 7 children, and then issued a statement boasting about it, and then went on and spent the next 2 weeks lying about it. Donald Trump would have been impeached after 1 week over this. And the press is just like, oh yeah, casualties of war, war is ugly, We're in uncharted waters right here now, and I don't know how it all ends. There's no way it doesn't end badly.
Yeah. Before I let you run today, I wanted to talk to you about your column on Norm Macdonald. He refused to pander to powerful socialist planners. I did watch the piece on The View, and it was absolutely hysterical. I've got to admit it. And for those of you who don't know about it, tell them a little bit about it, Charlie.
So he was invited on The View, and this was back it was amazing. It was like 20 years ago. Bill Clinton was still in the White House. And what was sort of amazing about it is all the ladies of The View were ancient even back then. And you had Barbara Walters on there, and maybe, is it Joy Behar? Is she the other?
Yeah.
The other person that's on there. Anyway, so he comes on there, and they ask him about the election, and he just starts talking about the murderer in the White House, talking about Bill Clinton, sort of opining about all of the theories at the time that were going on about Vince Foster and the suicide at the park across the river from the White House. And of course, the ladies of The View just went absolutely berserk trying to cover up. And as you remember at the time, there were some very obvious questions about what caused Vince Foster to commit suicide. There were lots of questions about how the park police handled the investigation, whether they were trying to cover something up. And, Norm Macdonald was just, he later said he didn't really know anything about any of it. He was just sort of parroting the obvious questions that were going around at the time. And the ladies of The View went absolutely berserk that this guy was sitting there even asking any of these questions on live TV. So they became so unhinged about it. At one point, a producer on the show called Norm Macdonald on a cell phone in order to get him to answer the phone while on live television on set, in order so that they could change the subject and start talking about something else, because they were so upset that Norm Macdonald was asking these basic questions that all Americans were asking at the time. It was kind of a ridiculous stunt, I guess, of sorts that Norm Macdonald had pulled, but they became unhinged because it ran contrary to the political view that, Bill Clinton was this great president and no questions should be asked about him. And they lost all sense of not only humor, but reality and basic questions and discussions that normal Americans were having at the time. They just become unhinged about it, because anybody that veers from the straight accepted orthodoxy in the press is verboten. And a guy like Norm Macdonald, he could care less about that. He would just sort of, he asked the questions that he thought were obvious questions, and he did not care he refused to pander to these people. And these people didn't know what to do about it. They couldn't believe that there was one person out there refusing to bow to their political line of thinking.
It is so true. Folks, if you haven't read Charlie's columns, check them out at WashingtonTimes.com. Charlie, thanks a lot. We'll do it next week.
Great to talk to you, buddy.
Thanks for listening to Politically Unstable with Charlie Hurt. Remember, you can read all of Charlie's columns at WashingtonTimes.com. And while you're there, check out our great selection of podcasts. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.